A heartless millionaire abandons his prized racehorse after a tragic accident, deeming it worthless. But a young woman from humble beginnings finds the injured animal and vows to save it. Before continuing the story, tell me which city you're watching from. I want to know how far this video has come. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so I can send you exciting stories like this every day. Mr. Ethan Harper's estate was the epitome of grandeur, a testament to the immense wealth and influence he had amassed over the years. Its marble stables, meticulously manicured pastures resembling emerald carpets, and a team of staff solely dedicated to the care of his prized horses painted a picture of unparalleled affluence. Among these horses, one stood above the rest, Rio, a sleek, jet-black thoroughbred whose regal presence seemed almost otherworldly. His mane flowed like a banner in the wind, and his gait on the track was a performance that left spectators in awe. Storm was more than just a horse. He was Mr. Ethan's pride and joy. Every race wasn't just a gamble for monetary gain, but a wager of his very reputation. The golden trophies adorning his office walls were a dazzling display of Storm's victories, each a jewel in Ethan's crown of triumph. Yet fate, as it often does, had other plans. On a pivotal race day, Storm bolted from the starting line with his characteristic power, precision, and a speed that seemed to defy the very laws of nature. Mr. Ethan watched from the exclusive VIP stands, impeccably dressed in his signature gray suit and wide-brimmed hat. "That horse is unbeatable," he muttered confidently to his guests, who responded with polite, sycophantic smiles. But as the race neared its climax, disaster struck. On the final turn, Rio's left foreleg slipped on the damp track, and his magnificent 100-pound frame crashed to the ground in a cloud of dust. The crowd fell silent. Even the commentators ceased their lively narration. Struggling to rise, Rio wavered, a sharp pain shooting through him, leaving him trembling. Track attendants rushed to his side as Mr. Ethan cursed under his breath, his fists clenched in frustration. Hours later, at the veterinary clinic, the news arrived, a blow that would alter everything. The diagnosis was grim. Storm had sustained a severe tendon injury. With intensive therapy and plenty of rest, he might recover enough for a normal life, but his racing days were over. For Mr. Ethan, the verdict was unbearable. "How much will rehabilitation cost?" he asked coldly, his voice devoid of warmth. The vet explained, "It'll require months of specialized care and constant attention. It won't be cheap, but it's possible." Ethan's jaw tightened. He wasn't the type to invest in anything that didn't promise returns. To him, a horse that couldn't race was as worthless as a car without an engine. Useless. That very night, as the ranch's staff retired for the evening, Ethan made his decision. Summoning two of his most loyal workers, men known for their unquestioning obedience, he issued his orders with chilling clarity. "Take Rio far from here. I don't care where, but I don't want him on my land," he commanded, his tone brooking no argument. The men exchanged uneasy glances but nodded. Working for Mr. Ethan meant following orders without question. In the still of the midnight hour, the men drove a truck to the main stables, where Storm lay resting. Despite his exhaustion and pain, the horse raised his head at the sound of the doors creaking open. There was a haunting sadness in his eyes, a deep, wordless understanding of what lay ahead. The men avoided his gaze as they carefully guided him toward the truck. One of them hesitated for a moment, gently stroking Rio's neck before they loaded him up, as though offering a silent apology for what they were about to do. "Forgive me, friend," one of the men murmured, his voice low and filled with unease. The journey was long and heavy with silence. The truck rumbled down desolate back roads, moving farther and farther from the ranch until the surroundings grew increasingly barren and hostile. Eventually, near a stream cutting through a forlorn landscape, they stopped. Without a word, they carefully unloaded Rio, their movements deliberate yet devoid of compassion. As they restarted the engine and prepared to leave, Storm limped after them, his gait uneven, his determination palpable. But the effort was futile. The truck disappeared into the night, its tail lights fading into the distance. Alone under a sky laden with clouds, Rio stood abandoned. By dawn, the world around him was unfamiliar and unwelcoming. The proud black stallion dragged himself to the edge of the stream, thirst driving his every labored step. As he bent to drink, his reflection shimmered back, a shadow of his former glory. He was no longer the champion that had once captivated admirers with his strength and grace. Pain throbbed in his injured leg with each movement, but an instinct deeper than reason urged him forward. There was no food, no shelter, only the relentless whisper of the stream as his solitary companion. Once the prized possession of a wealthy man, Rio was now a fragile, forsaken creature left to fend for himself in a world that seemed to have erased his name. As the first rays of sunlight painted the hills in gold, Lila, a 19-year-old girl, stepped out of her small wooden house perched on the edge of a quiet valley. Her home was modest, with weathered walls and a thin patched roof that barely held up against the rains, but it exuded warmth. Despite the hardships of her life, Lila carried an unyielding smile, a testament to her resilience. Her father, long gone now, had instilled in her a simple yet profound belief. Every living being deserved kindness and care. Lila held tightly to that lesson, honoring it in her daily life. That morning, Lila decided to walk down to the nearby creek to fetch water. Her faithful donkey, Charlie, trudged alongside her, two empty jugs strapped securely to his sides. Dressed in a worn denim dress and with her chestnut hair tied neatly in a braid, Lila made her way barefoot along the dusty trail. Her dog, Sadie, a scrappy mutt with oversized ears and an eager expression, bounded ahead, her energy infectious. As Lila neared the creek, something caught her attention. In the shadows of the trees lining the water, a dark figure moved haltingly. At first, she thought it might be an injured deer, but as she drew closer, the shape became unmistakable. "A horse?" she murmured, stopping a few yards away. "What's a horse doing out here all alone?" The animal was magnificent, its black coat striking even in the soft morning light. But its condition told a tale of hardship. Its mane was tangled, its body marked with cuts and dirt. Despite its impressive stature, it was clear the horse was on the brink of collapse. Its left foreleg was swollen and tender, and each step was a visible struggle as it tried to drink from the creek. A pang of sorrow twisted in Lila's chest. She had seen injured animals before, but there was something about this horse that went beyond its physical suffering. When it lifted its head and retreated with a feeble whinny, its dark eyes reflected more than fear. They were heavy with a sadness that seemed to echo from its soul. "Easy there, boy," Lila said softly, raising her hands in a gesture of peace. "I'm not going to hurt you." Sadie barked a few times, her curiosity getting the better of her, but Lila silenced her with a quiet command. "Sadie, hush. Don't scare him." Standing still, Lila watched the horse with careful eyes, her heart aching at the sight. The depth of its despair struck her deeply, and she knew she couldn't just leave it here. "Someone left you behind, didn't they?" she whispered. "But this isn't where your story ends." Reaching slowly into her bag, she pulled out a piece of bread she had brought for breakfast. Holding it out at arm's length, she spoke in a calm, soothing tone. "Here, boy, it's okay. You're safe now." The horse hesitated, its nostrils flaring as it sniffed the air. Hunger eventually overcame its caution. It stepped forward unsteadily, its movements halting, and carefully took the bread from her hand. "There you go," Lila said with a soft smile, her voice warm with relief. "You're going to be okay. I promise." Once she got close enough, Lila carefully examined the injured leg. Though she wasn't a veterinarian, she knew enough to recognize that the swelling was severe and that the horse needed immediate help. She glanced at the creek, then at Charlie, who stood patiently with the empty buckets. "This won't be easy, but I can't leave you here," she said firmly. Using a rope she had brought for Charlie, Lila fashioned a makeshift halter. With painstaking patience, she coaxed the horse out of the water. It limped with every step, yet seemed to trust Lila enough to follow her. The journey back to the ranch was slow and arduous. Charlie led the way with the buckets, while Sadie trotted alongside, keeping a watchful eye on the injured horse. Throughout the trek, Lila spoke in a soft, soothing voice, trying to calm the animal. "I think I'll call you Storm," she said suddenly, recalling her father's stories of horses as swift as the wind. "It's a good name, don't you think?" When they finally reached the small ranch, Lila guided Storm to the improvised stable, where she usually kept Charlie. Though the space was modest, it was clean, with plenty of hay for the horse to rest. Charlie, ever generous, gave up his spot without a fuss, while Lila fetched fresh water and a blanket to cover Storm. She spent hours tending to the inflamed leg. Using warm water and herbs her grandmother had taught her to use, she cleaned the wound with the utmost care. Storm neighed softly at the touch, but didn't resist, almost as if he understood she was trying to help. "I don't know where you came from, but no one's going to abandon you here," she said, gently stroking his neck. That night, as the moon bathed the valley in its silvery glow, Storm finally lay down on the hay, exhausted, but seemingly at peace. Sitting beside him, Lila felt a mix of sadness and hope. She knew caring for a horse in this condition wouldn't be easy, especially with her limited resources, but she couldn't turn away. "I promise I'll do everything I can for you," she whispered before turning off the oil lamp. As the wind whispered through the trees, Storm closed his eyes, feeling for the first time in days that he wasn't alone. The days passed slowly on the small ranch, each one presenting new challenges for both Lila and Storm. The horse, once weak and wary, began to respond to her devoted care. His leg remained swollen, and every step he took seemed a painful reminder of the accident that had altered his path. Yet, the serene environment and Lila's unwavering affection began to restore something he had lost: hope. Each morning, Lila rose before dawn to tend to Storm. Her routine was demanding, cleaning the wound, applying poultices made from herbs she gathered in the nearby hills, and ensuring the horse ate enough to regain his strength. Resources were scarce, but she always found a way to provide for her animals. "Come on, Storm, today's a good day to try walking a little further," she said, holding the rope she had fashioned into an improvised halter. At first, getting the horse to move beyond the stable was a struggle. Though Storm was willing, he would stop after only a few steps, limping noticeably. But Lila refused to give up. Patiently, she spoke to him with a soft tenderness, her voice steady and calm as she ran her fingers through his mane, encouraging him to take another step forward. "You know," she said, her tone filled with quiet warmth, "my dad used to say that horses are just like us. They need someone to believe in them so they can overcome their fears." Her words lingered in the air as she guided him carefully toward the nearby creek. "And I believe in you, Storm," she added with a gentle smile. Over time, those short walks began to yield results. The swelling in his leg gradually subsided, and bit by bit, Storm started regaining his strength. Though he still limped, there was a new spark in his eyes, a faint glimmer that reflected the care and love Lila poured into his recovery. One afternoon, as she gathered firewood to heat water, Lila paused to watch Storm from a distance. He stood alongside Sadie and Charlie, who had taken to him as if he were one of their own. The sight made Lila's lips curve into a smile. She knew the road to his full recovery would be long and uncertain, but seeing his progress was proof that her efforts were worthwhile. Yet, caring for Storm was no easy feat. The mounting costs of feed and medicine began to weigh heavily on her budget. Her only source of income came from selling eggs and milk at the town market, and with winter fast approaching, she was acutely aware that sales would soon decline. "I'm going to need help to make it through," she confided to the horse one chilly evening as she brushed his coat with an old wooden comb. "But I won't give up on you." As if understanding her words, Storm flicked his ears toward her and gazed at her with those deep, soulful eyes that never failed to move her. Lila let out a soft laugh. "Are you telling me you trust me?" she asked with a teasing grin. "All right, but I need you to do your part too." Weeks turned into months, and the bond between them grew stronger with each passing day. Lila often spoke to Storm as if he were an old friend, sharing her dreams and worries. "You know," she mused one afternoon, stroking the thick hair of his mane, "I've always dreamed of having my own animal sanctuary, a place where no horse, dog, or donkey is ever turned away." She let out a wistful sigh. "Wouldn't that be something?" Storm nickered softly as if to agree. One day during a walk to the creek, Lila crossed paths with Mrs. Martha, an older woman from town who often stopped by her ranch to buy fresh milk. Martha's eyes widened as they fell on Storm. "What a stunning horse you've got there, Lila," she said, approaching cautiously. "Where did you find him?" "I found him abandoned near the creek," Lila replied with a mix of pride and humility. "He was injured, but he's getting better, little by little." Martha's gaze lingered on the horse, her expression thoughtful. "This isn't just any horse," she said after a moment. "I'd bet he's purebred. Look at his build, his muscles, even now when he's still recovering. Have you ever considered that he might have belonged to someone important?" The question gave Lila pause. She had never entertained the thought that Storm might have been more than just another abandoned animal. His majestic presence had always felt special, but she had never imagined he could have a past so different from the other creatures she'd taken in. Whoever his old owner was, she said firmly, they left him behind like he was nothing. What matters is that he's here now. Martha nodded but couldn't hide her curiosity. If you ever need help with him, let me know. My nephew works in the city at a place that cares for horses like this one. He might be able to offer you some advice. Lila accepted the offer with a gracious smile, though deep inside she knew that Storm didn't need anything more than her care and love. To her, the horse wasn't just an animal. It was a reflection of her own battle to push forward despite life's hardships. That evening, as the wind whispered through the trees and the stars sparkled like scattered diamonds across the vast sky, Lila sat beside Storm, resting her head gently against his side. I don't know what your life was like before you came here, she murmured softly, but I promise you'll never be alone again. The horse, as if understanding her words, lowered his head tenderly toward her, his eyes closing with a peace he hadn't felt in a long time. Meanwhile, in one of the opulent estates owned by Ethan Harper, a man accustomed to taking what he wanted at any cost, chaos was brewing. At 47, Ethan was the formidable owner of a thriving empire of real estate and agricultural businesses. His immense wealth had secured his position among the most powerful circles in the region. But beneath the polished exterior lay a ruthless man who valued everything and everyone solely for their utility or profit. That afternoon, as he reviewed contracts in his expansive wood-paneled office, adorned with equestrian trophies, Ethan was interrupted by Dawson, his burly, no-nonsense foreman, who appeared uneasy as he stepped inside. Mr. Harper, we have a situation. We haven't been able to locate the horse. Ethan dropped his fountain pen onto the desk with a loud clatter and looked up, his brow furrowed. What do you mean you haven't found Storm? What kind of incompetence is this, Dawson? We've searched everywhere around the ranch, sir. The last we know after the injury, he ran off into the woods. We assumed he wouldn't survive long in that condition. Ethan rose abruptly, his face flushed with anger. Storm isn't just any horse, Dawson. He's the most expensive animal I've ever purchased. Do you have any idea what he represents to me? My reputation is at stake. Dawson tried to calm him. Sir, it's possible someone found him. We can extend the search to the nearby communities. Listen to me carefully, Dawson, Ethan interrupted, his tone sharp and menacing. That horse carries my name and my brand. I won't allow it to end up in the hands of some nobody. Do whatever it takes to bring him back. And if you fail, don't bother returning. Back at Lila's ranch, life continued peacefully. She devoted herself to Storm's recovery with unwavering care. Although he still limped slightly, the horse was showing signs of daily improvement. His once battered and scarred body had grown stronger and healthier thanks to Lila's dedicated nurturing. One afternoon, as she returned from a walk with Storm through the valley, her neighbor Ryan happened to pass by, herding his donkeys. He stopped in his tracks, his eyes widening as they fell on the majestic black horse. Well, I'll be darned, Lila, he exclaimed, tipping his hat to get a better look. Where'd you find that beauty? I found him abandoned near the stream, she replied, her voice a mix of pride and humility. He was in terrible shape, but he's getting better little by little. Ryan crossed his arms, scrutinizing Storm carefully. This isn't just any horse, Lila. He's got the look of fine bloodlines, probably from some high-end estate. Wouldn't surprise me if someone's out there looking for him. A chill ran down Lila's spine at his words, but she held her ground. If someone cared so much, they wouldn't have left him in that state. As far as I'm concerned, Storm belongs to no one else. He's part of my family now. Ryan nodded with a knowing smile, but before leaving, he offered a word of caution. Just be careful. Folks who own horses like that aren't always the nicest people. That night, as Lila brushed Storm's mane and fed him under the soft glow of the moonlight, Ryan's words echoed in her mind. The thought of someone coming to claim him filled her with a quiet but persistent unease. I promised you I wouldn't leave you alone, Storm, Lila whispered with quiet determination. And I intend to keep that promise, no matter what. Meanwhile, in a nearby town, Dawson and two of Ethan's men were already making inquiries. Armed with a photograph of Storm, they wandered through the streets, questioning locals. It didn't take long before someone mentioned seeing a humble young woman walking with a majestic black horse near the valley. They say she lives on a small ranch by the creek to the south, one of the men reported. Dawson nodded, a mix of relief and tension on his face. He knew reporting this to Ethan Harper wouldn't be easy. The man was infamous for never tolerating anything he considered his being in someone else's hands. "Prepare the horses. At first we'll head to that location," Dawson ordered firmly. That night, as the moon cast its glow over the small ranch, Lila gently stroked Storm, blissfully unaware that the horse's past was closing in on them. The first rays of sunlight were just peeking over the horizon when Dawson and his men arrived at Lila's modest homestead. The crisp morning air and serene landscape seemed at odds with the palpable tension filling the atmosphere. After hours of following vague directions from the locals, they had found the place. Though far from town, the ranch was situated strategically near the creek and surrounded by mountains, an ideal spot for raising animals despite its limited resources. The modest home, simple yet welcoming, was shaded by trees that provided shelter for the animals, creating a peaceful haven. Here, Storm had been recovering from his injuries. The distant sound of hooves broke the morning stillness. Lila, tending to Storm in the stable, paused and looked up, her heart quickening as she heard the approach of horses. Her first instinct was to remain calm, but an unshakable sense of unease told her this day would be unlike any other. Stepping outside, she saw 3 men on well-fed horses, animals that looked nothing like hers. At their head was Dawson, Ethan Harper's foreman, a name Lila had heard whispered in town but had never encountered in person. Dawson dismounted swiftly, his demeanor serious as his cold, calculating gaze swept over her, scrutinizing every detail as though assessing whether she was worth his time. The 2 men at his side remained silent, their eyes scanning the surroundings with an air of disinterest that felt deliberately deceptive. "Good morning, miss," Dawson began, his voice deep and commanding. "We're looking for a fine breed of horse. Have you seen one around here?" Lila, unfamiliar with the men or their intentions, steadied herself, though a knot began tightening in her stomach. "A black horse? Yes, maybe. I found one injured near the creek a few days ago. I've been taking care of him, but I don't know anything about fine breeds. He just looked like he needed help." Dawson studied her intently as if trying to decipher her thoughts. After a moment, he exhaled in frustration and stated flatly, "That horse belongs to my employer, Ethan Harper. He went missing after an accident on one of Ethan's properties." "Where is he?" The mention of Ethan Harper sent a shiver through Lila, though she kept her composure. She knew enough about the man to understand he wasn't known for his kindness or integrity. Rumors in town painted a grim picture of how he treated both his workers and his animals. The idea that someone so ruthless could own a creature as magnificent as thunder was almost too much to bear. Even so, Lila stood her ground. If it's his, then why was it abandoned in the woods? Injured and left to fend for itself, she challenged, her gaze unwavering as it met Dawson's. No one who truly cares for an animal would let it end up like that. I don't see how it's fair for someone to claim him now, as if he's just another piece of property. Dawson's brow furrowed, his irritation evident, as Lila's defiance caught him off guard. "That's none of your business. My boss owns that horse, and that makes it his right. If you find it, you return it. Simple as that." Dawson's tone was sharp, his words deliberate, but Lila felt her pulse quicken with defiance. She wasn't about to give in. Storm had been under her care, nurtured with unwavering love and attention. There was no way she'd let him be dragged back into a life of neglect. "I'm sorry, but this horse isn't leaving here," she replied, her voice steady yet unyielding. "I found him, healed him, and he belongs here now. I won't hand him over to anyone." Dawson's frustration deepened as he stepped closer, his expression hardening. "Don't make this harder than it has to be, Lila. My boss has the resources to get what he wants, and he's not afraid to use them. Let's not escalate this." His words carried weight, and Lila could see in his eyes that he was no stranger to forceful tactics. But she stood firm, her response measured but resolute. "I'm not moving. If Ethan Harper wants Storm, he'll have to come here and face me himself." The tension in the air thickened. It was at that moment Storm appeared, emerging from the shadows of the nearby shed. The horse limped slightly, but held himself with a quiet strength that demanded attention. His movements were deliberate, his presence commanding, as he made his way toward Lila with a protective air. Standing beside her, his gaze locked on the men, his imposing figure seemed to challenge them. "This horse has more heart than you could ever imagine," Lila murmured, her hand gliding over Storm's sleek neck. "And I won't let you take him." Dawson hesitated, clearly taken aback by the horse's reaction to Lila. For a fleeting moment, uncertainty flickered in his eyes before he regained his composure. Taking a step back, he issued a final warning. "We'll handle this differently. Ethan Harper doesn't forgive defiance like this. That horse belongs to him, and he'll stop at nothing to get it back." Lila met his gaze without flinching, then let him come and claim it himself. Without another word, Dawson and his men mounted their horses and rode away, their departure heavy with unspoken threats. Lila watched them disappear down the trail, her shoulders only relaxing once they were completely out of sight. Turning to Storm, she ran her fingers through his mane, her voice soft but determined. "None of this is easy, is it? But don't worry, I'm not letting you go." Storm responded with a gentle nicker, lowering his head to her as if understanding her promise. Lila smiled, feeling an unshakable bond with the horse. What had started as a simple act of compassion for an injured animal had transformed into a fight for his freedom. The ranch grew quiet after the departure of Dawson and his men, but unease lingered in Lila's heart. Their words, especially the threat of Ethan Harper, haunted her throughout the day. As she walked alongside Storm, who seemed more at ease now, her mind raced with the possibilities of what lay ahead. This battle was far from over. It had only been postponed. At her modest ranch, Lila tried to return to her daily routine, but an undercurrent of worry persisted. She knew Ethan Harper wouldn't give up easily. His wealth and influence made him nearly unstoppable. From her humble upbringing, she had learned one harsh truth. Men like him never settled for less than they desired. Storm's fate was hanging by a thread, and she couldn't let it slip away. Meanwhile, in Ethan Harper's grand estate, the atmosphere was entirely different. The sheer opulence of his mansion, with its marble columns and elaborate sculptures, stood as a testament to his ego and power. In his study, a crystal chandelier cast a cold light over the scattered blueprints and documents that littered the polished mahogany desk. Ethan, a commanding man of 47, sat back in his chair, his sharp gaze fixed on a photograph of Storm. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, running a hand over his hot face. "How could I have let this happen?" Dawson, his loyal foreman, had returned a few hours earlier with disheartening news. The search had been fruitless, and the young woman who had found the horse showed no intention of giving it up. Ethan's frustration mounted as he considered the time and money he had poured into securing Storm, a prized horse that represented not just wealth, but his standing among other millionaires and ranchers. Losing it wasn't an option. "What do you suggest, Dawson?" Ethan asked, fixing the foreman with a piercing stare. "We could simply go and take it by force," Dawson suggested cautiously, though he knew such an approach wasn't Ethan's style. Ethan had always leaned toward more calculated methods. Brute force, though tempting, wasn't his way of handling things. "I think we need to be more persuasive, sir," Dawson continued. "The girl is stubborn, but she can't defy the law forever, and if she tries, there are ways to make her see reason." Ethan nodded slowly, his mind churning with possibilities. "This needs to be resolved quickly. I won't waste any more time on this nonsense. If she won't listen to reason, I'll make her understand in ways she can't ignore." Just then, an assistant entered the room, interrupting the conversation. "Sir, someone's at the door asking to speak with you. He claims to be the young woman's lawyer." Ethan's brows knitted in irritation. A lawyer? For some girl living on a ranch in the middle of nowhere? What right does he think he has to come here and talk to me? Yet a thought crossed Ethan's mind. Perhaps this unexpected visitor presented an opportunity to resolve the matter without further complications. With a wave of his hand, he signaled for the lawyer to be shown in. Minutes later, a well-dressed man with a perfectly knotted tie and an air of quiet confidence stepped into the room. "Mr. Harper, I'm here on behalf of Lila Martinez, the young woman currently caring for your horse, Storm." Ethan regarded the lawyer with a mix of disdain and curiosity, but motioned for him to speak. "What does she want now?" he demanded. "My client, Mr. Harper, is willing to propose an arrangement," the lawyer said, his voice calm and measured. "She's not asking for money or compensation. Her only condition is that Storm be treated with dignity and not subjected to the inhumane conditions he endured under your care." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Guarantees? What kind of guarantees? She insists that Storm remain with her. Under her care, the lawyer explained. She wants to ensure he isn't exploited or worked to exhaustion. Ethan sat in silence, weighing his options. Giving up Storm wasn't just about losing a valuable asset. It meant relinquishing a piece of his carefully curated image and influence. Yet he couldn't ignore the complications that might arise if Lila continued to resist. Finally, he broke the silence. "Fine," he said, his voice firm and authoritative. "I'll speak to her, but make it clear she won't get the final say." Back at Lila's ranch, the young woman had started to question whether her resolve alone would be enough to withstand the pressure from Ethan Harper. Her once peaceful and simple life had been completely upended in recent weeks. Her concern for Storm consumed her every thought. But when she saw Ryan returning from town, a childhood friend who had been by her side through many challenges, a spark of hope lit up within her. "Do you really think they can take him from me?" Lila's voice trembled as she spoke. Ryan, who knew her better than anyone, gave her a steady look. "Lila, you've done so much for that horse. Don't let anyone make you doubt yourself. If Ethan Harper comes here, I'll stand with you." Lila smiled, grateful for his unwavering support, though deep down she knew the battle ahead wouldn't be easy. If she wanted to save Storm, she had to be ready to fight with everything she had. The tension between Lila and Ethan Harper had started to build, both of them willing to do whatever it took to claim what they wanted. For Lila, it was a matter of justice. For Ethan, a question of power and control. But no matter how many men or resources Ethan could muster, Lila was resolute. Storm wasn't just a horse. He was family, and nothing would tear them apart. The morning dawned gray and overcast, as though nature itself was forewarning the storm to come. At Lila's ranch, the atmosphere was thick with unease. Although it had only been a short time since Dawson's visit, Lila could feel the confrontation with Ethan looming. His men's threats echoed in her mind, and the fact that Ethan would go to such lengths for a horse like Storm only confirmed how far things might escalate. Ryan spent the day with her, helping with chores around the ranch, but his concern was impossible to hide. "Lila, this guy isn't someone you can just brush off. He won't take no for an answer. Things could get ugly." Lila nodded, her jaw tight. "I know, Ryan, but I'm not backing down. Storm has been part of this ranch since the day I found him injured. I won't let them take him away." She paused, her voice steady with conviction. "If life's taught me anything, it's to never give up, and I'm not about to start now." At that moment, the sound of hooves interrupted their conversation. Lila looked up and saw a group of riders approaching fast. Ethan Harper was at the front, flanked by Dawson and several other men. He wasn't coming alone. His commanding presence was undeniable, his face a mix of determination and arrogance. The air grew heavier, as if the brewing storm wasn't just in the skies, but in the hearts of everyone gathered. When Ethan dismounted, his piercing gaze locked onto Lila. His cold, calculating stare showed no hint of empathy. "So here you are," he said in a low, menacing voice. "Do you really think you can stand against me, Lila? I'm Ethan Harper. What I want, I get." Lila stood her, though her pulse quickened under the weight of his proximity. "You're wrong, Ethan. I don't bend to threats, especially when it comes to doing what's right. Storm is here because I saved him, and I won't let you drag him back into the hell I rescued him from." Ethan's brow furrowed, but he didn't let his anger show. Instead, his tone shifted, quieter yet just as dangerous. "You're playing with fire, Lila. If you want to keep that horse, what's your plan? Do you plan to stand against my power, everything I represent? The poor don't win battles against the rich. They never have." Lila, unfazed, stepped forward. "I may not have your wealth or your properties, Ethan, but I have something far more valuable: respect for what is right. This horse deserves better than what you've offered." Ethan's men watched silently, clearly stunned by Lila's boldness. Dawson, standing beside his boss, glanced at him nervously, well aware that Lila was not someone easily intimidated. Still, Ethan showed no intention of backing down. "Do you think I care about your opinion?" He sneered, a cold smile stretching across his face. "Nothing you have here is enough to challenge me. If you truly think you're on solid ground, am I wrong? Or perhaps you fail to understand the enormity of what you're stirring up." Despite the tension, Lila stood her ground. "I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm defending what's mine, Ethan. And if you think force is the only way to take it from me, then I'm ready to stand my ground. Storm isn't just a horse to me, he's a living being who deserves freedom. If you can't see that, it's what makes you truly small. A heavy silence followed her words. Ethan's men glanced at him, waiting for a signal, but Ethan Harper was not used to being challenged so directly. For a moment, he seemed to weigh his options. Yet, inside him, rage was building. He wasn't accustomed to losing, much less to being defied by someone without the means to oppose him. "Fine," Ethan finally said, his voice quieter now but laced with menace. "If it's a fight you want, it's a fight you'll get. But don't fool yourself, I always win." Lila, her gaze unwavering, answered with a firmness that made Ethan's men hesitate. "I'm not looking for a fight, Ethan. I only want you to understand one thing. The truth always prevails. No matter how vast your fortune or how strong your power, you can't buy justice or the human heart." Ethan smirked, but this time the confidence in his expression was missing. "We'll see, Lila. We'll see." At that moment, his men edged closer. Some moved with uncertainty in their steps, while others stood waiting for his command. Lila couldn't let Ethan's words linger unchallenged. She knew this was a pivotal moment. For her, for Storm, and for the life she had built. Deep within, she felt that she wasn't alone in this fight. Though the road ahead promised to be long and difficult, and even with Ethan Harper's power and resources stacked against her, Lila was resolved to fight to the end. Not just for Storm, but for what he symbolized: dignity and respect for the lives of all creatures. As the sun dipped behind the clouds, the tension between Lila and Ethan reached its peak. Her ranch, usually calm and peaceful, now felt like the stage for an impending war. Around them, Ethan's men stayed on high alert, their eyes fixed on every movement, awaiting their leader's next command. Lila showed no signs of being rattled. She understood that this fight was about something far greater than her own well-being. Ethan, his face a mask of disdain and the arrogance that defined him, took a step closer. "I'm done wasting my time, Lila," he said sharply. "This is your last chance. Do the smart thing and hand over the horse without making this harder than it needs to be. If you don't, you'll regret it." Lila held his gaze, her voice steady as she drew a deep breath. "I won't hand Storm over to you. My mind is made up, and I'm not going back on my decision. You're used to getting whatever you want with money and power, but you can't buy what you don't understand." Ethan's eyes flickered with a strange mix of irritation and intrigue as he observed her. It was rare for anyone to defy him, and though her defiance enraged him, it also stirred something deep within, a dormant challenge he hadn't felt in years. For a fleeting moment, he seemed to waver, but his composure quickly returned. "If you think you're going to win, you were sorely mistaken," he retorted, his voice edged with anger. "The law is on my side, and I have every resource at my disposal to take what's rightfully mine." Lila straightened her back, her voice unwavering. "Not everything in life can be settled with laws, Ethan. There's something far more important than that. Respect. Respect for living beings, for those who can't speak for themselves. Storm belongs here with me." Ethan took a step back, his expression hardening as Lila's resolve refused to falter. He turned toward Dawson, his loyal right-hand man, and gave a subtle nod. Dawson, ever ready to carry out his employer's orders, reached into his coat and pulled out a set of documents, extending them toward Lila. "This is what's best for you, Lila," Dawson said, his tone calm but firm. "Sign these papers, and Storm will be yours forever. Ethan guarantees there won't be any consequences. All you have to do is sign." Lila glanced at the papers but didn't flinch. She knew Ethan Harper's contracts were rarely what they appeared to be. An instinct deep inside warned her that signing those papers would bind her to his influence indefinitely. "I'm sorry, Dawson," she replied firmly. "I won't be part of your legal games." She pushed the papers back toward him, her voice steady with a conviction. The tension in the air grew thicker. Ethan's eyes darkened as his attempts to intimidate her fell flat. He took another step forward, his voice low and dangerous. "You're right about one thing, Lila. Not everything in life is settled by the law, but I still have my methods." With a nearly imperceptible motion, Ethan signaled to his men, who stepped closer. The shift in the atmosphere was palpable. The threat was no longer just words. Ethan was ready to use force. "Wait," Lila said, her tone calm yet resolute. What you're doing is an abuse of power. I won't let it happen, whether through the law or my own courage. I'll fight for what's right." At that moment, Ryan emerged from the shadows. He had been watching silently from the beginning, a quiet witness to the standoff. Though he lacked Ethan's wealth and influence, his loyalty and bravery were undeniable. "Lila's right, Ethan," Ryan declared, his voice strong. "You can try to intimidate us, but you won't get what you want like this. This isn't your land, and if you make a move, you'll face more resistance than you're prepared for." Ethan's eyes narrowed as he turned to face Ryan. His surprise evident. The young man was nothing more than a humble farmhand with no power or fortune, yet his determination seemed unshakable. He stood as a reminder that there are things money and power cannot buy, the unyielding spirit of ordinary people. "This isn't a threat, Ethan," Ryan continued, his voice steady but firm. "It's a warning. If you persist, there will be consequences. Lila isn't alone, and you won't destroy what we've built with your power games." For a fleeting moment, Ethan hesitated. Deep down, he recognized that resorting to violence could spiral into a problem far beyond his control. Despite his wealth and influence, even he had limits, lines he couldn't cross without drawing the attention of others. Still, his innate arrogance wouldn't allow him to fully retreat. "Enough," Ethan commanded sharply, addressing his men. His voice carried an edge that hinted at both frustration and warning. "This is taking a turn I didn't anticipate. But make no mistake, Lilola, the next time you interfere with my plans, there won't be any warnings. This isn't a fight you can win." Lila met his glare, her heart pounding, though she betrayed no weakness. She drew from an inner strength that had become her anchor. "The fight for Storm has only just begun, Ethan," she declared, her voice unwavering. "Don't fool yourself. Storm is more than just a property to me. It's a life I've saved, and I won't let you destroy it out of sheer ego." Ethan, realizing the futility of pressing further today, signaled his men to withdraw. The tension in the air crackled as he turned away, his retreat far from an admission of defeat. Lila knew this was a temporary reprieve. Ethan Harper wasn't a man to surrender easily. As the dust settled over the ranch, Lila stood firm, her chest heaving with adrenaline, yet showing no outward sign of faltering. Ryan remained by her side, concern etched across his face, though there was a glimmer of hope that perhaps the worst had passed. "You did well, Lila," Ryan said, his gaze fixed on the horizon where the setting sun painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson. "But this won't be the end of it. Ethan won't let it go," Lila nodded, her eyes lingering on the path Ethan and his entourage had taken. From a distance, Storm, the proud and magnificent horse that had been at the center of this battle, approached her, its presence a comforting reminder of why she fought so fiercely. "I know, Ryan," Lila replied, resting a hand on Storm's neck, feeling the warmth and strength of the creature she had devoted herself to. "But I can't back down. Storm isn't just a horse. It's a life I've nurtured and protected, and no matter how much power or money Ethan throws around, I won't let him take that away." Ryan studied her, moved by the unyielding determination in her eyes. For all of Ethan's power, Lila had something he could never buy, the courage to stand her ground and fight for what was right. Yet, as Ethan's parting words echoed in Ryan's mind, he couldn't shake the unease. The shadow of what lay ahead loomed over them both. "What do we do now?" he asked, his voice low. "We can't just stay here waiting for him to return. We need a plan." Lila drew a deep breath, her gaze shifting to Storm. The day had been grueling, but she knew the road ahead would be even harder. Ethan Harper wasn't the kind of man to let threats dissipate into thin air. His promises carried weight and danger. "The first thing we need to do is make sure Storm is safe," she said firmly. "I'll take him somewhere Ethan can't easily find him." "And after that," Ryan pressed, his brow furrowed. "We gather allies," she replied, her resolve hardening. "We can't face Ethan alone." "Allies? Who would possibly stand with us?" Ryan asked, his voice heavy with doubt. Lila's smile was faint, tinged with a sorrow she couldn't quite hide. "More people are willing to fight for what's right than you think," she replied softly but firmly. "Ethan may have his wealth, but we have something he'll never understand. The support of those who've lost, those who, like me, know that money isn't everything." A flicker of determination crossed her face as she resolved to take the next step. Lila was keenly aware of Ethan Harper's knack for exploiting any weakness. And while she lacked the resources of a wealthy man, she possessed something far more powerful: the truth of her cause. Through the long night, she and Ryan strategized, reaching out to farmers, neighbors, and even strangers who, like them, recognized the value of standing up for what truly mattered. They prepared for what felt like a final stand, intent on showing Ethan that the ranch and their resolve were not his for the taking. As the morning broke, Ethan Harper returned to the ranch, radiating a smug confidence that Lila would inevitably bend to his will. He strode through the gates, expecting submission, only to be greeted by a sight he hadn't anticipated: a growing crowd of people, all united by a shared defiance. These were not just neighbors, they were individuals who refused to let one man's greed destroy what they had worked so hard to build. "Well, Lila," Ethan sneered, his smirk cutting through the charged air. His eyes scanned the crowd dismissively. "Did you think you could challenge me with this lot? They're just farmers. They have no idea what it's like to take on someone like me." Lila stepped forward, unwavering as she met his gaze. "You're right, Ethan," she said. "We may not know how to play your games, but we know what it means to fight for what's right. And I will not yield. Storm belongs here, and I will not let you take him." Her voice rang out, clear and resolute, silencing even the whispers of the crowd. Ethan's smirk faded, replaced by a darker, more menacing expression. "We'll see about that," he snarled. "I thought I could reason with you, Lila, but now I see you're just stubborn. Do you really think you can win? This isn't just a fight between us, it's a war, and everyone here will pay the price." Lila's steady gaze never wavered. "You're right about one thing, Ethan. It is a war, but it's not the kind of war you think. This fight isn't just about us. It's about justice, about life, and as long as you believe that money can buy everything, I promise you'll lose. This time, I won't back down." The weight of her words settled over the gathered crowd. Even Ethan's men, who had exuded confidence moments before, now shifted uneasily under the collective strength of the villagers. For all his power, Ethan faced something he couldn't manipulate: the unwavering unity of a community driven by purpose and principle. "You're wrong, Ethan," Lila declared, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "Because while you believe that money and power are everything, there are things you can't buy: respect, justice, and the will to fight for what's right." In that moment, Ethan knew he had lost. The determination etched into every face around him, and the quiet, unshakable resolve in Lila's eyes left no doubt. His retreat was slow, his frustration and rage barely concealed as he realized he had been defeated on his own terms. Storm, the horse whose fate had sparked the entire struggle, remained at the ranch, finally free from Ethan's grasp. It wasn't just a victory for Lila, but a triumph born of solidarity and the unyielding courage of those who had rallied around her. Though the confrontation had ended, its lessons reverberated through the small community. The ranch and its people flourished in the years to come, a testament to the enduring truth that wealth and power are not omnipotent. Lila had proven that heart and bravery, backed by unity, could overcome even the most formidable opponents. Lila and Storm, the horse who had once been a victim of Ethan Harper's greed, had achieved far more than anyone could have imagined during those bleak days. The legacy of their struggle, a battle that once seemed hopeless against the might of a wealthy man, became the story of a community that learned to stand together for what was right. Lila, now a woman marked by years of hard work and resilience, remained the unwavering heart of the ranch. Storm was no longer a young stallion, but his enduring strength and noble spirit continued to inspire all who saw him. Together with Lila, he had become part of a sanctuary where abused and abandoned animals found care and solace. Not just horses, but creatures of all kinds discovered a haven at her ranch, a place filled with kindness and second chances. One afternoon, as Lila strolled through the countryside, she paused before the old wooden house that had stood witness to so many battles, both emotional and physical. The gentle breeze stirred the branches of the trees, and the sound of horses in the paddock filled the air with a serene calm. Beside her stood Ryan, her steadfast companion, his warm smile a constant reminder of his loyalty. Despite the years that had passed, he remained her unwavering support. "All of this, Lila," Ryan said, gazing at the flourishing ranch, "is because of you, your courage, your fight. None of us will ever forget what you have done." Lila smiled, but her eyes betrayed a blend of nostalgia and contemplation. "What I did wasn't just for me, or even for Storm," she replied. "It was for all of us, for the community, for justice, and most of all for those who can't speak for themselves." The legacy Lila had built was evident not only in the prosperity of the ranch, but also in the transformation of the entire town. What had once been a place of suffering, where the land and its animals were subjected to relentless greed, had become a beacon of hope. Neighbors supported one another, and a shared sense of purpose drove them toward a brighter future. Through her bravery, Lila had reshaped the trajectory of their small corner of the world, proving that a single act of courage could spark changes that would ripple across generations. In the distance, Storm grazed peacefully in the open field. His steps were slower now, but his gaze remained as noble and determined as ever. Lila understood that despite the passage of time, he would always symbolize their struggle. Together, they had shown that some things, like integrity and compassion, could never be bought, no matter the wealth or power aligned against them. The memory of Ethan Harper faded into obscurity over the years. After his defeat, he retreated into his business dealings, his name no longer carrying the weight it once had. Though many still remembered him as an arrogant and ruthless man, it was Lila and Storm's story that lived on in the hearts of those who called the town home. In time, Lila Harper, as many began to call her in tribute to her bravery, left an indelible mark on the community. As the years passed, she handed over the reins of the ranch to the younger generation, ensuring her vision would endure. Though she was no longer the young woman who had once stood against Ethan Harper in a defining confrontation, her spirit lingered in every corner of the land she had nurtured. Ryan, too, stepped into the role of mentor and guide, safeguarding the story of their struggle and perseverance so it would not be lost to time. Together, Lila and Ryan ensured that the values of courage, unity, and hope remained alive, reminding future generations that even in the face of overwhelming odds, the human spirit could triumph. The ranch, now a beacon of what it means to stand for what is right, continued to thrive under the leadership of those who valued justice, unity, and a deep respect for animals. Storm, now aged and wise, remained the iconic horse, a constant reminder of the triumph achieved, one where the heart's strength prevailed over blind power. Years later, Lila, now an elderly woman, strolled through the ranch with a slow, measured pace. Her face bore the marks of time but radiated a profound sense of peace. She had lived a full life, one filled with struggles, and an unwavering pursuit of justice. As she gazed toward the horizon where the sun began its descent, she reflected on the moment everything began. Her thoughts lingered on her bravery, the unyielding strength of her community, and the love for animals that had shaped her path. "It's all been worth it," she whispered to herself, gently stroking Storm's mane. The horse stood beside her, seemingly understanding every word. Lila Harper had carved her legacy into the fabric of the world, and though life could be harsh, her story served as a lasting testament that the fight for what is right never truly ends, no matter how many years pass. And so, Lila's ranch, with Storm at its heart, remained a symbol of hope, a tale passed down through generations. It was a reminder that, even in the darkest times, courage and justice will always endure. Wow, what a journey we've just been on together, right? While Storm's story is a work of fiction, it carries some truly profound lessons that feel incredibly real. At its core, this is a tale about courage, compassion, and standing up for what's right, even when the odds are stacked against you. Lila's unwavering determination to protect Storm reminds us of the power of kindness and the importance of giving a voice to those who cannot speak for themselves. It's not just about a horse, it's about the bigger picture. Respecting life, standing up to greed, and finding strength in unity. I mean, how inspiring was it to see an entire community rally together against someone as powerful as Ethan Harper? It's a reminder that money and power don't define true greatness. Heart and integrity do. The story of the young woman and the horse is not just an emotional tale of compassion, it is a profound lesson in resilience and the power of community. In a world full of challenges, we often cannot win with money or power. But when we have enough faith in what is right, with unity and love, we can overcome anything. Like the young woman in the story, each of us has the power to change the life of a creature, a person, or even a community. The message of this story is crystal clear. Protect what you love and never give up when faced with adversity. If this story has touched your heart, don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss out on more inspiring stories. Join our community of love and share the good values we all cherish. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.